some of the tips and tricks of the trade to get on a podcast as a guest. A bit tongue-tied this evening, and again, just taking you some of the tools that we make available on Podcast Talk that help get you booked on shows. So we have a podcast guest booking toolkit that you can sign up for. That gives you 4 media kit templates, a spreadsheet for tracking the shows that you've been on, a 35-page ebook that takes you through all the stuff that we're going to talk about today and all the equipment and what you need to get started, etc. and around that, and an ebook that contains multiple templates, whether it's funny or business or whatever it may be. So you can use all these manual components to get started and start reaching out and becoming a guest on a podcast. So without further ado, let's get the show started and move on. So let me just turn my video off so you don't have to get distracted. You can actually focus on the content that we're going to talk about today and get started. So what you can see is Podcast Hawk and who are we and what we're about. So like I say, let's get on with the show. So who are we? Where did Podcast Hawk come from? So it started from the sort of pain point that we all know and love, and that's why we're here today, is trying to become a guest on a podcast is not as simple as you think it is. So Ray, our founder, 2019 it was, God, it feels like it was a lifetime ago, wasn't that long ago, 2 or 3 years ago, wanted to promote his business out and thought podcast would be a great way of doing that. Comes from an SEO background, wanted to go and reach out, start to get some of the domain authority love from getting backlinks and all that sort of aspect. So rainy Sunday afternoon, depending on where he was. If he's not sunny Lancashire like me, it never rains here. And he started to get on shows. But what he found is he just spent a lot of time to try and get on shows, and it was manual. So that's why we're here today, is myself and Ray came from different perspectives. He came up from a technical angle and started to build it. I joined a little bit later as co-founder and started to work with him. But we looked at it from a different perspective, but wanted to solve the same problem. How can you, as an individual, a brand, an agency, a book author, whatever you may be, get on podcasts quickly, automated, and do it in your sleep without having to go through this pain? And we're going to talk about that pain point, but it's where you're getting started. So some nice glorious pictures of us here. Ray always wears his sunglasses because he's cool around that. And again, you know, we come from different areas. Ray's based out of Mexico. Again, he's actually the founder, not co-founder, but whatever shenanigans. So I joined as a co-founder a while ago. I do the marketing and all the sort of sales side. Ray does the back end, the technical stuff. Ishmael runs the developer team. So we're spread all across the globe. And yeah, it's a rockstar team. There's not hundreds of us, but we're out there and we're building. We're creators. But in terms of guest podcasting itself, you know, we believe that that's a thing in a sense, and it brings value. But don't just trust us, don't believe us. So Pat Flynn said this recently in terms of guest podcasting is a new guest blogging. And he's relating back to something Seth Godin said a long time ago about guest blogging around that. But this new medium, this new audio medium that's been around for a long time but has now seen lots of growth, is a way of getting yourself out and building awareness of your brand or you as an individual or your domain authority very quickly without having to write. Essentially, you can use what's in your head and use your voice and get that out there. And again, you know, John Lee Dumas talks about this a long time ago and how he built his show using the Pat Flynn effect, which was by being a guest on Pat Flynn's show. Really simple. But look where John Lee Dumas is now. He's turning over $250 million in revenue per month from podcasting and bringing people on and having a show every day. And then Neil Patel comes from that background of SEO and blog posting and such, a well-known, recognized figure. But again, he's saying, you know, this is the new king. Forget guest posting, guest podcasting is the new king. So, yeah, we believe in this, but don't believe us. There are other people out there verifying that guest podcasting is the new medium. So why guest podcast? So let's look at it. We're seeing a growth. So more people are listening to podcasts now than ever. And they're starting to listen to podcasts in the car, in home, Alexa, Google, wherever it is. But there's so many spaces now where you can listen to podcasts. You can be at work with your headphones on or in the car, but there's lots of content out there as well. And what that means is that hosts are looking for more guests to keep feeding that content. And when you get interviewed on that podcast, think of it this way. What you're doing is going, I want to reach a highly targeted, engaged audience. They're listening to my show or the show, whatever it may be, because they want to learn something. They want to gain something around that. And maybe it's a podcast about fly fishing, and they want to hear about the best ways to fly fish and whatever it may be. But if someone's willing to listen to that 30, 45, 60-minute interview with you on it, you can bet they're interested in that topic. They want to know more about it. They're interested enough to listen and take on that content. So, a typical sort of interview lasts anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, around that sort of time frame. And that gives you a lot of time to tell your story, share some of your best advice, get across who you are, your domain authority around that, your knowledge around that. And then I am not a writer, unfortunately. I'd love to be a writer and write a book, but I'm not. But think about the amount of time it would take me to write an article as a guest post for another website. That would take me more than a few hours. On average, a really good writer, maybe an hour. A great writer, or an average writer, a couple of hours. A poor writer like me, probably a day, because I just keep going around procrastinating around it. But in terms of exchange of value and exchange of time, 30 to 45 minutes of your time, exposure to hundreds, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of listeners is a great use of that time. And what that means is, as a guest, you get on a show, you get exposed to that guest, that host's audience and their listeners, and it's targeted around that. And as they listen to your voice and can hear in it, they get to know you and trust you and feel a bond with you. And bringing that back from a sort of sales aspect, let's think of it that way. When people know, like, and trust you, they're more likely to buy from you. So it's pure basic sort of sales mentality, and you don't have to do this just from a sales aspect around that. But again, it's just coming back to words are great and build credibility and knowledge, but you may have outsourced that. Actually talking, hearing your voice, and the confidence in your voice and the audio builds that trust and affinity with that audience, and then they come to you. Think of it this way as well. We talk about blog posts and guest posting and that sort of aspect quite a lot, and not putting a negative spin on it, because actually it's got a positive. Because when a podcast host creates a new episode, they may create a blog post around a show notes type page, and then they'll publish that. And that publish page will probably include a link back to you, whether you've got a website or your LinkedIn or wherever it may be. A place for their listeners to go and find out more about you. It's called a call to action at the end of every sort of show. What's your call to action, Mr. Guest? You can come and find me at xxx.com. And it's also a component that they may mention your website or wherever it may be as well through the interview. So you've got that sort of double bubble. It's in the audio and it's in the page as well. What that means is that you're getting backlinks from that site. And what a backlink is somebody saying, hey, there's Stuart over there, and he knew about fly fishing. Boom, there's a link to him. Go and talk to him because he knows about it. It's great. But also, you get to share your social networks. Now, it may be that the podcast hosts themselves has got a wide social network because of who they are or what they do or their niche. So you can cross-promote there. You promote the activity when you're a guest out to your audience and through all the mediums that you can. They'll do the same, vice versa. So you get that effect. Get all this power of awareness and community for 30 to 45 minutes of your time. Obviously, there's a little bit more of that just because you've got to then go around and sort of do the social content sharing and that sort of thing. But, generally think of it as that time investment you need to do around that. So that's great. But how do we do all this? How do we become this rock star, amazing, super duper guesting? Where do I start around that aspect? So I'm going to talk through the way to do that today, very briefly, in terms of the manual sort of way. And then we're going to talk about what I term the easier way around that aspect. So we'll just jump out of the deck and go to a Google search console. So let me just share this with you again. There. So there's a couple of ways you can do this, and this is the way I'm going to talk about now is the manual way, and this is how you can get started. So like I say, we have the podcast guest booking toolkit. It's got all those pieces in there of templates and tracking and a media kit and a ebook that guides you through all of this, how to set your equipment up, how to do searches, etc. Around that. But this is how me and Ray started. We went to Google all those years ago around that, and this is the pain point. So we looked at shows that we'd like to be on, and we did a search. And I've pre-scripted this because otherwise you've got to watch me type and try and get those little brackets and things. Oh, yeah, it could be game over. But I want to look to get on shows about marketing. So I've done that. I've done a search. I can see a podcast about marketing. Boom. Great. That's great. That sounds fab. It's about Google Ads and online marketing. I'd like to be on that show. So click on that link, and it takes me through to what is called the paid search podcast. And I can look at this, and it's come up in Apple. That's great. So you can see here, there's the link. It's going to take me through. Fab. So just in joys of internet connectivity, and make sure that we have that page loaded. So you can see this has got 203 episodes. It releases every week, so it's got shows that are happening ongoing. It's got good reviews in terms of 4.8 out of 5. Awesome. Across 285 reviews, so that's really great around that. So it seems a really credible show. I can go and listen to it. It's in the business category. It ticks all the boxes for the show or shows that I'd like to be on. And I can look at the description around that. Now in this description, you can see it's actually got the website link in there. So I can go to there. Most descriptions don't have that. So I would then go to Google and go and search for it and go and find it. But in this case, it's actually there. So it saved a little bit of time. I don't have to go and find it. So I can go to their website, and they've got a standard contact us form. It's quite blank. It's quite generic. It will go into an email that they receive to say whatever I'm going to say. Now, you can use this. So what we've done here is we've gone find a show, a little bit of time. There's one, but there's loads that I could go and look at, but here's one that I think is interesting. Clicked on it. It's got all the details. It meets my criteria, my filters to go and reach out to it. It's got the website listed already there. So I can go to the contact page. And when I go to that contact page, I can see here that I can fill this form in. I can use the templates that I talked about that we provide already and go and fill that in and send it across there. But that's not really that great, is it? It's clunky, and yeah, that may have taken me 5 minutes. It may have taken me 20 minutes because I'm going back and forward, sort of looking at shows, looking at are they relevant, are they live, around that sort of thing. Because I don't have a filter mechanism there that says, actually, is that show broadcasting? Has it broadcast in the last 3 months? Is it about marketing? Does it have all these sort of criteria? Does it have really good reviews, or has it got poor reviews? Whatever it may be, there's some filters there. So what we're going to talk about is, like I say, the easy way to do this, which is Podcast Hawk. So for those that don't know, coming to this new, no idea who we are or what we do, we talked about the team and that sort of thing. So Podcast Hawk is a way of doing everything that I've just shown you simpler and quicker and automated, and a way of doing it in such a way that we can help guide you through this activity, whether you're a newbie or more experienced around that. So let's get started anyway and show you. So if I look here, I've got what we call our power filters, a way of filtering out the shows. So when I searched before on Google, it was just a very generic, I'm looking for marketing. With ourselves, you could look for marketing in the title, in the description, could actually filter by category. So actually, is there a podcast that's in investing or books or management, etc., around that side of things? We can filter it down by, has it had an episode in the last week, day, month, year, whatever it may be. Episode number, so has it had more than 1, 5, 10, 50, 100 episodes? And episodes don't necessarily dictate quality, but what they show is a consistency, a release consistency behind that. Podcast score we'll talk about a little bit separate. The number of reviews and the average review rating. So again, we want over 4 or 5, where it may be. And language. So is the language in Spanish, German, etc., whatever it may be it's released in. What we say to people that are just starting out is, excuse me, start with description. Description is the more rich data. It's the longer form sort of piece from a searching aspect. So I'm looking for marketing. But what I want to also look is it live? Has it been releasing recently? So let's look back over the last sort of 6 weeks or so. But also, I want to be on shows that have got good ratings, that have got reasonable ratings out there, that is doing well. So if we look at shows that have got 4 stars. So what I'm doing here is I'm searching for shows similar to the one that I just showed you, which is marketing in the description, had a show in the last sort of 6 weeks or so, and has reasonable ratings. And we can change all this criteria. We can move it up and down, whatever we want to around that. But we hit search. What that then does is go and do all that magic in the back end and come back with the shows that fit that criteria around that. So we can see, boom, yeah, it's come back with a list of shows around that aspect. And what that means is now I've got a list of shows I can go through, and yeah, that's still going to take some time, similar to Google, but I've filtered it out into the criteria niche down that I really want to reach out to. Again, just to caveat this component, these filters work on the basis of the information the host provides. So if they're not providing the language, they may not necessarily appear in this search. So if I was looking for a language search of Spanish and the host hadn't put that tag against their show, it wouldn't appear in the search. So that's one component. What we are doing in the background is we're going through the data that we have, and we're adding more data to that around that. So we're adding, if we know it's Spanish, yeah, let's add Spanish to that tag, so we can give that component there to it, adding more sort of social data and metrics and other components as well. And that's done through actual physical human beings doing that activity, so it's actually verified data. It's not just some random computer going out there doing it. So if we have a look at the shows, if we want a bit more depth, do I really want to be under the influence with Terry? Sounds like a Friday evening, not sure. Let's go and have a look. So I click on the magnifying glass. What that means is it brings back a bit more description. So Terry O'Reilly, that's the title there. I can see a short description that he's put through about what the podcast is, the categories he's focused on, so society and culture. He's a host on CBC Radio. It's got a language tag against it, which is great. Country of origin, US, lots of reviews, again, blended across there. And what we have here is our podcast Hawk score. And alluded to this earlier, and what it is, it's a moving target of metrics that are bundled together. But essentially it's, is the show being released in a sort of regular cycle? Are the reviews keeping consistent, etc., etc.? So it's a moving target. So this score for Terry may change over time, based on how well his show is doing. So again, it may be 65 this week, next week it may change. And also if we wanted to, we can see the last 5 episodes, and we can listen to some of them as well here. So it gives us a bit of context. We don't have to go to multiple screens, go into Apple, everything is all in one place. You don't have to go through 3-4 different tabs just to look at one show or to listen to it. Sorry. So I like Terry's show. I'd like to be on it. I'd like to reach out to Terry. I click plus. Boom. This is where I'll explain the credits. What this means is I want to reach out to Terry, so I need his contact details. That's going to cost me 1 credit. No matter what else I do on the site, I download it, I run campaigns or whatever, depending on my price plan, a credit is based on getting the contact details for a show. So if I then say, great, I want to download these details because I'm going to email Terry manually. It's just a quick email I'll send him. That's fine. Click download. That'll then cost me 1 credit. Done. Gone. That's fantastic around that activity. But again, if I go and download that again, it doesn't matter because I'm only downloading it once. 1 credit. If I've downloaded it 90 times, I've still been charged 1 credit. I don't take any more. So that's one component around that. You'll also see here, I've got a component called campaigns that we're going to talk about. But before I do, I'm going to come back and go and see about some shows later on similar to Terry's, but I haven't got time at the moment now. So I'm going to save this search as marketing less than 2 months. And I'll save it. So That's great. I've found some sort of content that I'd like to reach out to, but I want to come back to it later because I've got to go and make a cup of tea, or I've been interrupted. I haven't got time to focus on it now. But I've done that initial search. What I can do is when I run that search again, I can go, right, okay, well, I've come back now. I've had a cup of tea. I'm ready to do it. I'm not being interrupted. I can see this is a search that I did, and just click on view. That'll bring all that criteria back that I've built, and it may be a couple of filters here. It could be 8 filters, it could be 1, whatever it is, but it's something that I want to go and revisit and do again. So I can then click search again, and away you go. So what that'll bring back is, oh, Terry's not there anymore. Terry's gone because I've downloaded Terry's details. But actually, if I wanted to get his details again, I can run it and I can see Terry will be back in here somewhere. You can see already there's lots of shows that I've already downloaded details on, but it would then appear in the search. So we can mask it or not mask it, depending on what you want to do around that. So it can be a fresh search. It brings back ones that I've not been in contact before, not spoken to, or I can show all the ones that I've already contacted or download the details of, etc. around that. So you can save that search, like I say, and download these campaigns. So one area before we move away from this sort of front end aspect is, so if we look at Creative Talk podcast, maybe it's not for my criteria. So looking at it, it's it's not in a language of choice for me or a focus. So it's like, right, I don't really want to reach out to that one. I don't want it to appear in my searches because at the top it's a really positive show, but it's not one that I'm going to be on. So I can archive it. What that means is it removes it from searches and future searches and save searches, and it goes into an archive. So it's ones that I don't want to appear in my searches because there's no point. It's taking me time to read it and look at it. There's no point in it being in there. So that's one area. So that's the search capability of the platform. And like I say, there's areas here so you can look at where credits have been spent, logging in, logging out, all those sort of activities around that. That's great. But always your save searches are held here. Those podcasts that you don't want to appear on are held there. And then you download, you can see that I download the show's details in what's called a CSV. And that file, that comma separated file, is something that can be opened in Excel or Google Sheets, etc. Around that. But excuse me, if I can't find that, or it's magically disappeared off my desktop or my download folder, I can download it again. But when I download it, it doesn't mean that I'm being charged again. It just means that I'm downloading it because, remember, a contact show's details is 1 credit. So 1 show, 1 credit, no matter what I do around that. Make sense? Good. So finally, we're going to move on. Well, not finally, but sort of wrapping up briefly is campaigns. And this is where Podcast Hawk comes into its own. So it's Sunday afternoon. It's wet and rainy. I'm going through Google. I'm finding the podcasts I want to be on. I'm then going and creating the outreach email. I'm putting that into a contact form, or I've got their email address. And I'm repeating that. I'm doing it. It's like, God, it's taking me a long time around that. So what do? Actually, I create this thing called a campaign. And this may make sense to a lot of people or not, but think of it a way of, we'll send emails out and it'll come from you. It's not coming from Podcast Hawk. It's coming from your email. And that could be Stuart at Podcast Hawk, or it could be Billy at Podcast Problems, or whatever it may be, but it's coming from your email. It's coming from you. So it syncs up around that. And you set that up in your settings to access that. So you set your email up to interlink with it. And there's a separate component that talks about how to do all that. But just think of it that way. It's coming from your email address, whatever that may be. And we attach on there your signature. So maybe you want to represent yourself as a personal individual or as a brand or whatever it may be. But you attach your signature to those emails that are going out. Really simple. Then the campaigns themselves, they're made up of templates that we have in the platform, or you can put your own templates, your own emails in there as well, and all become clear when I show you one and run through one. So in this case, I've got campaigns running out that I want to be on shows on around SaaS podcasts, which is great. Awesome, great title around that, and I've put some description in there. Just it's they've got less than 50 shows, so they're grown ones. So the core is I've created these emails inside the platform using our template. So every time you want to use a template, you select it and it inserts it in here. So you don't have to cut and paste or remember any of that. You don't have to use those templates. You can actually cut and paste and put your own in there. No problem at all. Gives you a little bit of choice around that aspect. What we've also done is, hey, what was the name of the podcast host? I can't remember. I have to go and look. What was it called? Was it called Chris or was it called Bill? Not quite sure. Don't have to worry. We've got these things called shortcodes. They're already inserted in our templates, but actually you just put it in here and away it go. Automates that. So, hey, Chris. And same again. I'm Stuart Townsend. I'm doing this. That's great. I'm a big fan of your podcast. What's the title? Was it Coffee Over Marketing or Marketing Under Coffee or don't know? Again, shortcode, put in the podcast title. And you can keep doing that component with these little shortcodes. You can put links in, you can embed images, do the standard stuff that you would with an email. And before you, excuse me, send it out, you can see a preview, make sure it looks nice. And you can send a preview to yourself as well. It's like, right, okay, boom, let's send an email out. Let's see what it looks like, what they're actually going to receive. But also, is it spammy? Let's do a spam rating. What's it look like? Great. Yeah, I'm awesome. I'm not a spammer. So my content is sounding fab, sounding good. It's not hitting the sort of spam filters of most of the email providers when it's coming inbound. So that's the first email. Then, if you don't get a response, then you move to the second email, which goes 3 days later, 7 days later, and 14 days later. And you can create all these with these templates really quickly. You can do this in like 5 or 10 minutes. But what that means is that's 5-10 minutes of time that you've done to set that up that could be going out to one podcast or 100 podcasts. There's none of this going back and forward of, right, okay, let's go back to my search. I found my search, I found the contact form, I found the details, the website, the contact form, etc. No, it's like literally I'm creating these templates here and this messaging, whether it's our templates, your own, or you just write one line, whatever it is. It's about taking that time away that you spent doing that manual thing and automating that. So literally, here's them ready to go. Fab. But what does that all mean about sending it out? Well, I can go into my email settings and set how many of those I want to go out a day. So I've got 100 podcasts I'm going to reach out to. Just send 10 emails a day because I don't want my email account to look different than it normally would. But if I'm sending lots of emails, you can increase this. But we restrain and make sure that you're not sending out thousands because otherwise you will get banned. And it's your email. Don't forget, it's always your email. The start date, so when do I want to go? Today, tomorrow, next month, whatever it may be. And then the signature. So I've got multiple signatures in here, but how do I want to represent myself when I'm reaching out to this podcast host? So I've done all that. I've got it set up, but actually I've got all these podcasts to reach out to, and there could be 5, 10, 100, 20, whatever it is in there that you want to reach out to. And you may do a volume sort of reach, and then you may have particular ones. But in each one, you can go and customize it and go, actually, this looks really great. So this sounds like a really awesome show. I want to spend some more time on it. So what I can do is I've got all the emails here that would be going out to that podcast host. But actually, I can then go, well, look at all these shows that he's released. I can go and have a look at the description. I can listen to the show, and I can customize this. So I can make it very particular and maybe take a component out of one of these shows that relates to what I can talk about or bring value about or of interest. So what it does, it makes me stand out, makes me different from the other inbound requests they're receiving to be a guest. It makes you unique. That's the core of it. So the core is here. We're automating this manual flow, making it simpler for you and making it customized so that you can send personalized outreach to these hosts. And that's what you need to do to stand out. And then finally, you've got a list here that are active and what's going on. You can then also see your messages coming back. So you don't have to check your email, etc. You can being Podcast Hawk, messages are going out. And again, don't forget, as you sleep, if they've not replied within 3 days to the first message, they get a response. So let's do some maths. I'm reaching out to 100 podcasts. I've got to remember, if none of them come back, to send a message out in 3 days' time to the other 100 and reply again. And do the same in 7 days and do the same in 14. Around that. We do all of that. And then those responses, they come back to you here so you can reply and start to organise being on their shows. So that's the core. But yeah, so let's wrap up in terms of, that was the easier way, obviously. We just talked about that component here. But yeah, in terms of the actual benefits there, so you can see the component is that we can automate a lot of this activity, and we can save you time, but also, again, it comes down to the maths. If you want to reach out to 100 podcasts to be on X amount of percentage of their shows, you can customize maybe 10 of those outreaches, and the other 90 is standard templates. But even the standard templates that we've got in the platform, and we give you are really powerful crafted messages that we've used and our customers have used to be on 100 or 150 shows. So yeah, so you can see we've walked through today the benefits of guest podcasting, what it means, what's the value you can get for it, how it's going to impact you as an individual or as a brand, whether you're an agency, a book author, whatever it may be, how it's different to writing a guest blog post, all that social component that you can get, and backlinks and all the sort of web type traffic. Think of it as that. You're getting an audience, you're building credibility because you're bringing audio and voice and trust out there to an audience that is niche and targeted and wants to engage because they're spending that time to listen to that podcast. And the core thing is there's no more Sunday afternoons trawling through and doing all this. We can automate that side for you, make it really simple, and it just happens in the background around that aspect. And you can start to get booked on shows, come back to us some really good success stories, tell us how you're famous, and yeah, just start being a really great rockstar guest. So go and check out podcasthawk.com. Go and check out our free assets. So you'll see on there we've got ebooks on podcast data, so how it's growing. We've got the podcast guest booking toolkit that you can sign up for around that, and there's a whole load of more material and infographics on there as well that show you some of those values. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next webinar.